School committee meeting on Monday, December 2nd. I think we can do a roll call.
Yes. Ms. Leonard, Mr. Lettieri?
Here.
Mr. Matucci?
Here.
Ms. Petrie? Here. Mr. Purinton? Ms. Barry?
Here.
Ms. Powell?
Okay, I think, is there a flag in here so we can not flag?
No flag.
You pretend.
Give me, find a flag.
I know, I said somebody pull up a picture.
This was filmed on Korean Indian.
Do you have a flag on you?
No.
Hold on.
No.
Well, good, when we find one, you can lead us in the
Oh,
flag.
there we go.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah, that's what I said.
All right, here we go.
All right.
All right.
Mr. Purinton, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any public comment? I don't think so. Okay. I think we have to move on to financial and business. Can we get a motion to approve the warrant SVW 25-10 in the amount of $748,991.86?
Motion.
Second.
Great. Can I have a roll call, please, Patty?
Yes. Mr. Lettieri?
Stay.
Mr. Matucci?
Yes.
Ms. Petrie? Yes. Mr. Purinton?
Yes.
Ms. Barry?
Yes. Motion passes. Okay. Next, can we have an update from the budget subcommittee chair, please?
Yes, we had a budget subcommittee meeting on 11/26 at 4 p.m. It was an open meeting. Members were myself, Lane, and Julie. Others in attendance were Jim Lettieri, Lisa, Lori, Phil Lundberg. We talked about the 2.5 override. And one vote was taken to recommend to the full committee a $4.95 million Winter Public Schools 2.5 override on the ballot in February of 2025. That was passed, 2-1.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion?
Just to give if I can, a little update about what happens next. So we don't have a school committee meeting until, I believe, the 16th of December. The chairperson, who can't be here tonight due to a family emergency issue, did speak with me. She sets the agenda for the school committee meetings, as you know. She would like to have a school committee, a special school committee meeting on December 9th for that sole purpose, to discuss the budget subcommittee recommendations, further discussion and potentially a vote of the school committee to either pass or not pass the recommendation of the budget subcommittee. And the sole purpose of that would be to ready the next steps, to put together what the committee wants in terms of a ballot question and dates, and how they want that question framed, and then that would move on to the town council for a vote. Jim, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
And that gives, we work with a timeline because I believe it has to be done 45 days before it actually hits a ballot and for, to set the election. So there's still some work to be done on that. But Jen did talk about, her desire to have that. I don't believe she needs a school committee vote to set a special school committee meeting, but she did want me to bring it up so that everybody sort of was on the same page. We've been doing a lot of work on the budget and the proposed figures for next year and just looking at what it would look like should the override not pass, and if it will pass, and being able to come up with some details around that for some more information in terms of moving forward with the override.
Great.
I don't know if anyone wants to weigh in, kind of split that a little bit.
I've already weighed in already.
Yeah.
But I could, if you want me to weigh in again, I will.
Up to you.
Yeah, my thing is that the voters rejected it. And I think we need to adjust the number. I don't think we should be going back there with the same number. And kind of telling the voters that, we don't care what you say, just, this is what we want. So my recommendation at the meeting was to back out the 1.6 million for the stabilization and do a $3.4 million override. So that's a little what I'm thinking.
And I agree with Gus on almost everything he said. I think, you had 40% of the registered voters in Winthrop saying that they did not agree with 4.95, so whatever the reason is, cost, our fault with educating, whatever the reason is, I think it's hard to tell the people that, like Gus said, we don't respect your vote as much, we're gonna come right back. I think, and Gus didn't say he wants to not have a stabilization fund. I think he just said he didn't want to fund it right away, but I think we should, 3.2, 3.4, continue to put some small amount, a couple $100,000 in a stabilization account. My thought on the council is I am going to bring to the table of the council to have a change in policy, financial policy as to how we allocate free cash so we can contribute some to a stabilization account. I think we have to work a little harder with Lisa, who has been working incredibly hard to just find every nickel and dime we can. Going to a lower amount is not saying we didn't need the money from the beginning. We were hoping to start and still hope to, I still hope to anyway, and I think most agree that we want to start a stabilization account for education. But we know what we need for next year, and we have to make the public aware of the consequences of getting nothing, rather than, if we go back for 4.9 and it's rejected once again, we're in a really, we, the children, the community, because it will affect all departments, because the town will have to make serious adjustments to try to help out in any way they can, which is going to have a ripple down effect on every department. I'd rather go in with a lower amount, realize that we're still doing everything we can, and there still might have to be adjustments, we don't know yet, but I think with Lisa's skills and the school committee's passion and the staff that we have, I think it will be fine. And I think we have to be incredibly focused on educating everyone. The public, whatever campaign hopefully is working with this to help this pass. I don't think there's a doubt, even though it failed, in a good way it failed. I don't think there's a doubt that there's a need. The question is educating that need and figuring out a way that people can afford it too. I mean, you have to be cognizant, we all have to be cognizant of all the citizens and what their issues are that they have going on with their day-to-day lives too. But all we want is the best education we can provide for this town. I think we've done an incredible job and we have to maintain that. But to maintain it, we're going to need increased funding. And, I don't even know, I'm sure Lisa doesn't even want to get into departments that will be severely affected by this, but there's going to be severe consequences if we don't pass them.
Yeah, I mean, I can just give you sort of a broad brush. I mean, when you're down a couple of $1 million in funding to start the school year from where you are now, and you have a budget that is primarily salary, and a much smaller amount goes to expenses, and that the expenses are things that are mandatory: heat, electricity, materials, supplies, contracts that we already have vendored out to people for curriculum, instruction, materials, special education tuitions, all of those knowns. You know that you don't have any wiggle room in the expense line. So you only have really two categories of your budget, which is expenses, which include, areas of expenses that we have no control over: health insurance, unemployment insurance, which of course if you lay people off, that number skyrockets. Those things are always, kind of up in the air in terms of how much they're going to go up the following year. You can project it, but you can't cut, because they haven't gone down historically, they've gone up. So what's left is salaries, and what are salaries? Salaries are the bodies that are working within the public school right now. So if you have to cut, anywhere from $2.5 to $3 million out of a salary budget, it's not as simple as taking the highest paid salaries and cutting those, because teachers have professional status, there's rules around that. So when you're looking at, teachers, it's sort of the lowest people on the totem pole, not in terms of salary, but in terms of, last person in the door. And, you're talking a school district that has 197 teachers in total, 194 teachers in total. And not just teachers, so the teachers, speech pathologists, occupational therapists, nurses, they all fall in the category of teachers in our eyes. So when you look at that number, you're looking at lowest salaries, about 52,000, 53,000. How many teachers times 53,000 are you gonna lose? The impact is, obviously class size will skyrocket. We're in the mid-20s right now, 23 on average at the elementary level, and that's not overly manageable. There's been a significant change in the demographics of our students, the unfunded mandates that keep coming through the door, and there's, as you watch the news, there are school districts that are paying a lot more than Winthrop, different school districts, and there's places for people to go. So teachers will have jobs which might not hit our unemployment for the length of time that it could. However, the teachers that are left there are going to be left with large class sizes and the inability to do the direct instruction for individual kids that we need to do, not just kids with IEPs or 504s or ML issues, but general education kids. So that's the impact. I mean, it's primarily salaries, which means primarily people in the midst of it all in the classrooms. And that's where we'll have to come, so you guys can do that now. I'll be doing it, so it's really hard to do it now, until I know exactly how much we would have to cut and really go through and see any expenses and turnover, that kind of stuff. But you're not talking 10 teachers, or ESPs. We have ESPs, we have 77 ESPs in the school district. And 70 of them are mandatory. Those are tied to students with educational plans or medical needs or as such. So the only other 7 that are not mandatory are the 7 kindergarten needs. Kindergarten class size goes up to 28 to 33, somewhere in that area. I don't know how manageable it's going to be for one teacher to take care of 23 to 28 5-year-olds, especially if somebody has to go to the bathroom. So those are the impacts. It's pretty significant. Just to lightly name a few. And the other options you have is one that we don't want to ever have to visit. We don't want to ever have to charge kids for co-curricular activities. Right now, we charge what I consider a relatively low fee compared to other school districts, $250,000 for athletics and $100, right, or $275.
$250.
Yeah, $250. I'm way in the balance. $250 per athlete per sport, and that covers very little, about $160,000 out of an $800,000 to $900,000 athletic budget. So another way to mitigate the impact is to increase those fees and lessen the amount of money that has to come out of the school budget to supplement those. And the only way to do that in increasing those fees is one, to just blanket increase them, or to do a tiered athletic fee and other co-curricular fees. You tier it to the actual activity. So how much does it cost in total, for example, for baseball? How much does it cost for transportation, for equipment, for the coaches,
For the whole program.
tournaments, the entire program, you add all that up, and then you divide it by the number of athletes that you would have to have at a minimum to create the cost per athlete. So it may be different for football than it is for hockey, than it is for tennis. And then the other co-curricular activities, some of which we don't charge for, would have to be charged for. Other areas are increasing, preschool tuition is the only tuition. Although not talked about yet, right now, we're free kindergarten across the board. That's not mandatory. It does bring in Chapter 70 money, but the offset of that would have to really be looked at. So I'm not saying we would charge for kindergarten, but we have in the past, and depending upon how desperate things get, that could be something that the committee decides they want to do. Just to name a few things.
I think too, it's important for the conversation next week too, to look, we're looking at either or, different numbers we're talking about, but the potential of looking at an option, a menu item, so to speak.
Did we get an answer on that from Glenn?
We've got multiple answers.
Yeah, so we get, right now, we have, I think, did you tell Paul to look into it?
I did, and then I provide, he had to look at
Yes, I
this.
saw that, and I couldn't, I'm reading that, I'm not,
I've read it like 5
it's kind
times.
of a little,
A little
Very,
wishy-washy.
very
Yeah.
confusing
It
about how you
seems-
can propose questions, like a tiered system.
It seems
Yeah.
like you can, like a town has the ability to do a menu item
Yeah.
that, specific amount for police or fire or DPW.
Right.
I don't think the school, well, looking at this and what we know, I don't think the schools can do that because it's a bottom line budget.
Right.
Right, so you can't say, do you wanna
specify-
give
you
this
can't
or you
say,
wanna do
Right.
that?
Yeah. I don't think you
let's
can.
do a $300,000 override for band.
Yeah.
I don't think you have the ability to do that, but I do think, by looking at this, you have the ability to say, would you like a $4 million override, a $3 million override?
Oh. Okay.
I-
So
I
4.9
believe-
would maintain all
Right.
teachers and create a stabilization
Could
fund.
create a
and
stabilization
3.5
fund, this
for-
3.5 could create a smaller stabilization fund and still maintain, whatever. I think you could do that. I don't know if you could say that in the question, though,
Right,
what you
right.
could do. I think you could provide a supplement explaining what each option would give or not
That
give.
would be the ideal scenario.
And then what I did
Yeah.
read in there, it said that if more people, wherever the highest votes go, if they go to the top number, then the top number prevails. So if it's, if the vote is split, and 400 who voted for the larger number and 300 who voted for the lower and 100 that voted for no, nothing at all.
That's the other
Right.
thing, I didn't see.
You didn't see the nothing at all, neither did I.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's, 4.9 yes, no, 3.2 yes, no,
Yeah.
3.1
And how do
yes,
you-
no, I'm not,
Yeah,
well,
then
that's
the
what.
higher number would,
And-
And that's why I think it's important that we have a week now to try
Yeah,
to
to figure
clarify
that
that,
out.
because
That's
that
good.
could be an
Yeah.
option that,
And that would get multiple numbers in there.
Mhm.
Could that be accomplished? So for the people who want to keep it at 4.9, for the people who want it to go to 3.2, as long as people understand what it is that they are voting for. I just haven't really gleaned out how you would, I guess if somebody voted no, no, and no, then they're voting no, no and no, they're voting no
Yeah.
across the board. So then if you vote yes for one and no for the other,
Yeah, but what
What
happens
does
when
it
they vote
count?
yes for two?
right,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, if you vote yes for two, the higher number prevails, I
Got
did
it,
read
okay.
that. I just don't know how you figure out
Yeah.
how many no's.
We gotta get that figured out.
You
Someone's
know.
gotta have the answer.
oh,
yeah, because this says like a pyramid type, right?
Yeah.
And you could have question 1C, shall the town of Winthrop be allowed to assess an additional 4.9 million in real estate taxes and property taxes for the purpose of operating the Winthrop Public Schools? 1B would be the same exact thing except 3.5, and 1C would be 3, or whatever. But I don't know if
How
it's,
you calculate.
well, I'm
unless
assuming
it's
the higher
no,
one
no,
would
no, is
win,
that
but,
3 votes or is it
right,
one?
but is there a no question, is there a no answer somewhere?
Right.
If somebody wants no override.
Right.
So I think that's something we have to find the answer to before we decide.
Yeah.
And,
This is really tough. It's hard because we don't have information as to why people voted no, right? We don't know if it was the number. We don't know if it was the override in general. We don't know if it's just that they didn't understand the question or they didn't know anything about it and they just voted no for no, Like there's no.
I think there's a combination
Yeah, there's a-
probably of
yeah.
everything.
Yeah,
I
so you
think
have
some
to
people
assume-
truly, and which is absolutely 100% accurate, some people just
Can't
truly
afford it.
can't afford it,
100%.
right? Some people just had no idea about it, some people were tired of reading 3 pages of
Yeah.
a menu.
Some people are irritated in general. Like
Yeah.
there's just no way
Some
to
people
predict.
But the
voted
thing-
no because they thought it was the MCAS question.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
but I
No, it
think
wasn't.
the thing that's interesting is, like 90% of the people did answer the question, so they
Yeah.
got to it. I
Yeah.
was concerned on the 3rd page with all those ballot questions that they wouldn't even get to it. But 90+% of the people did answer the question, so they were,
Yeah,
there for a
it's such
reason.
a hard thing, right? It's like, nobody's taking it lightly, everybody, like, it keeps me up at night, Like, just really concerned about how we can make sure we get this through, regardless of what that looks like, because without it, we're really, really in big trouble, and I think we need to articulate that extremely well and at a high level.
And then if we're thinking a lower number will pass, how much lower? I don't know that any one of us could determine what that palatable cost would be.
Right.
You know, that's the hard thing.
It's hard, and you have to,
I think you gotta try to go for the number that's gonna get us level serviced.
right,
For-
with
for,
a smaller amount in the contingency.
Which I
guess,
think,
so
but again, on
stabilization.
that part of the puzzle there, I think that, you know, with what's happened so far this year, what we think probably how it's gonna end up as far as retirements go. And then some people that haven't been replaced yet. And
Yeah.
there should be a little bit of money, I think, left over that we might be able to start. We'll put a couple $100,000 in that stabilization account. The other thing was on those handouts they gave us at the last meeting. They gotta be careful on that because I think they're taking numbers from 2023.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking
23.
about the committee, okay.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know their names. But, so they, I mean, it was great they did that work. I think it's fantastic they're paying attention and researching.
Yep.
But when you throw that out there now that we have the shared costs in there, that's almost $10 million. That's gonna change that number.
The shared cost, you mean?
The health
Oh,
insurance.
yeah,
We never had any of
I
that
know.
in our budget. When we interviewed Tony, and when he came in and told us, you know, what their budget was for like 1,500 kids. Well, it's like $10 million more than us, because they had all their costs in there.
Right.
They had health insurance, they had retirement, they had all this.
Yeah, we jumped from a $23 million average, school budget in 1 year to a $34 million school budget.
Yeah.
You know, so it
gonna
dramatically
change,
increased,
yeah.
which is very, to the eye is very concerning. People thought, oh, wow, the town gave them an extra 10 million.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
And in fact,
We
not
lost
really,
500,000.
we actually lost
Well,
500,000.
we gave you 10, but they took it back.
Yeah, well,
Took back
yeah.
10.4.
Right.
But now what happens is
With
your
interest.
bottom line budget becomes 35 million,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and then you're not
There's
at
the-
that low number anymore.
So we have to concentrate on the operating budget, but you have to have people understand the entire.
yeah, which has been very difficult to get people to understand. It took me a while to figure it out
Yeah.
myself, so.
And we're paying for the school, like, the
Correct.
school building is coming out of the school.
Yep, all the debt exclusion, yep, all the
Right.
debt
So all the
exclusion.
debt exclusion, so.
And we've never had that,
No.
before. And again, a lot of those numbers are, they're like basketballs, they just bounce forever, you just don't know.
Yeah.
Health insurance going up 9.5%,
It'll go up again next year.
astronomical in 1 year.
It'll go up again.
That's, who can keep up with that?
Right, well, the debt, some of the numbers are constant, right, so the debt,
Yeah.
you know what it is, but health insurance, you just don't
Health
know.
insurance,
every year.
unemployment,
You
workman's comp, you just don't, you can't
Those
follow
numbers
that.
were crazy.
I have a question, Jim, maybe Lisa thinks you might know the answer to it, is the debt exclusions that taxpayers are paying for the schools. At some point, some
They
of those
fall off.
schools start to fall
Yeah.
off, and.
So the Cummings is paid for in its
Okay.
entirety, Fort Banks is paid for in its entirety. For the town, Miller Field comes off in 30. So in 4 years, 5 years, it comes off the tax rolls. And that was a $9.5 million override,
And
debt
what-
exclusion.
Yeah,
And then the middle high school doesn't come off, which isn't that far away now, but it's another 14 years.
okay.
But that's, basically, that covers the cost of an override.
That was about
So it's
50
a-
million, right?
That was 42 and a half.
Yeah.
The schools cost like 84, 83,
65%.
we got, yeah,
Yeah.
we got 65% reimbursement of 60.
But the 9.5
52.
million on the average tax, on the average house right now, is that what they're paying, that similar to an override?
Yeah,
So
but the
they-
9.5, see, the
That's
debt
spread
exclusion is
over
different
years.
because you're paying it in
Yeah,
a
over time,
smaller
20
period
years.
of time though, too. Like the
Right.
schools were paying over 20 years, the Miller Field was 15 years or whatever.
Right.
So we're paying, I think on the average house right now, the Miller Field debt exclusion cost the taxpayers more than Fort Banks and ATC. That's
But is
how
it
crazy,
similar
that's what
to-
it rates out, but it's roughly $300 a year.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I
And
just
the
didn't know
schools are
whether the
roughly
schools were falling
7.
off, if it was happening
The
anytime
rules are
soon.
roughly 6 or 7, but it's in that, like, that's,
Yeah,
that's the difference with a debt exclusion, right? It's gonna, and the difference with a debt exclusion is it doesn't hit it doesn't hit the tax roll. So if you passed a firehouse in in the spring, that means, but it wouldn't hit your personal taxes in its entirety until probably July of '27. Because you don't borrow, if you're borrowing 30 million, you're not borrowing
It
it
all
the
at
next day
once,
like to
yeah,
buy
yeah.
a house. You're borrowing it a little at a time, so it hits it
like a home
sporadically.
equity loan.
Yeah, kind of like that, so it's hit, and if you're doing a school override, if they passed it in February, it would hit their taxes in July.
Yeah.
And again, you look, the 4.9 is roughly $935, 3.5 is roughly, I don't know, 640, 635, I think. And those are all things that we should be aware of too when we vote, because it's, you know,
Yeah.
it's
And
people's
those are those,
finances.
I think this time around, being able to put more information attached to the question
Yeah.
is gonna be
Yes.
helpful for people, because I know that was probably caused some no votes, because you had the 4 questions from the state that gave you a dissertation about what you were voting for, and then you got to the schools, and there was nothing, and that was not because we didn't want to educate
Right.
people, it's we weren't allowed to do that in an
Yeah.
election year.
Yeah.
The state creates the ballot, and they don't
Yeah,
allow you
and
to do
even
that.
these questions from DLS said the same thing, it's no explanation, it's just pretty much a simple
Yeah.
thing. But then we can do like a sheet that gives an explanation,
Right.
a separate thing.
Right,
that
right,
shows an
which we could
explanation.
not do at the regular election,
Yeah.
so I think that will be helpful
So,
to voters.
knowing that we'll have a little bit more information for Monday, and we'll have a vote on the amount and then take it to council, can we talk a little bit about how we approach this, knowing that one number or the other is gonna be approved, right? And we're gonna be going for it. I think, in talking with Lisa and the committee with the feet on the street, I think one of the things that maybe as a school committee we can do better is presenting a more united front out in the public, right? And I don't mean like going out holding hands and singing Kumbaya through the streets of Winthrop, but more, just more visible work, more visible communications. So, for example, putting out a press release that we send not just to the Winthrop Transcript, but we get it out there. We send it to the local news, we send it to WCBB, we send it to the radio stations. Maybe we have a press conference to talk about it. I put together, I'll give this, Lisa printed these for me, but I put together like an outline of how I'd recommend we approach it in order to give, and this is really designed to give the Citizens Committee the air cover they need, so that they can be the feet on the street, you know, doing the more tactical, one-to-one interactions, right? So this would give them more broad air cover, so people generally get a sense for what's going on.
It's 3 pages each. Okay.
Oh, 4 pages.
Sorry, I missed the collating staple button.
So, I mean, take the time to
Patty
look through
knows.
this
Patty
on your
knows.
own, but the idea is that, you know, we do some press around this. We do a press conference if we can pull it off, lots of social media engagement.
And this has not been given to anybody.
No, this is just for us to look at. I wanna just talk about the approach, because I think presenting a united front and demonstrating to the community that we're all committed to making this work. Yeah. That's done, Patty.
Yeah, I'll just put it in here. Thank you.
And again, it doesn't have to be this, this was what popped into my mind on how we could help support the committee, because they are asking for that. They're asking for more support from us as a committee. So again, press release, press conference, there's details here on how we could execute that, social media push to the community, and then, you know, targeting media outside of Winthrop, getting some attention out there. I think could help increase the sense of urgency, demonstrate that we're all committed to it, you know, which I think gives faith to the community, you know. If we're out there saying that we believe in this and we want to do it, and our community's at risk for a host of reasons that we will clearly articulate, and I think that we're better served, you know, in trying to get their support.
And I think having the details of what's at risk is important. First time around, I think a lot of us had faith that it was going to pass. I know I did. That's just me. And not doing the, you know, fear mongering that people talk about, although it wouldn't be fear mongering, it would be, originally if we had done it, it would be actually the truth and what we
Yeah.
believe is gonna
And I
happen,
think-
and now it's sort of letting them know that.
Right, and it's definitely a fine line too, because you don't want to scare teachers, right? You don't want to scare our educators out of town by telling them it's going to be, you know, terrible if this doesn't pass, but, you know, it's still the reality. Like, we need to, for the community to understand the reality. So, anyway, we can talk about it later, but I just wanted to share.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you for doing this.
no problem. Alrighty. Any PR? No, not today. Alright, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion adjourned, meeting adjourned.